Hi, everybody. I'm back again, and I'm here with yet another chapter. Um, as I was saying, as I was saying before, yesterday, I'm currently on chapter 29. So if you haven't listened to past broadcasts, because that's what I'm doing, I'm reading my dad's manuscript, The Guardian, 1982 version, as opposed to the 1977 version in the blue right there. Um, Once again, if you haven't listened to past broadcasts, just stop now and go back because chapter 29 people, assuming there was 28 chapters before this, so it won't make a lot of sense if you jump in now. Or do, and then you'll be confused. That's your choice. um but without further ado, I'm going to hop right on in. So this is Guardian of the Sword, 1982 version, chapter 29. Let the whistle a little bit here. Okay. Two kings in the courtyard fight, sword and dagger in the morning light. The prize is high to rule the land, and victory goes to the swiftest hand. The dark king moves with skillful sword, marching in matched by the golden lord. Iron ringing of the parried blow is musical measured as round they go. Is musical measure as round they go. From Battle of the Kings by Rorik of Aventir. Rorik was wakened early the next morning by one of Vedran's swordsmen. He was a lithe and slender man, and his shield had seen wear, though it had been freshly painted since the previous day. The king wishes to speak to his leaders, my lord guardian. If Rorik had doubted his Northland origin, his manner of speaking removed all doubt. I shall be there presently. Rorik was the first of the leaders to reach Connell, who was seated outside his tent, deep in thought. What is it, friend? Our scouts report fresh armies of Hygerians? No. The road west from Corel is filled with Hygerians, men, women, children, fleeing someplace beyond our wrath. Then why do we meet so early? The war host cannot move today. It is this I wish to discuss, but let us wait for the rest. Already Fedrin was striding up, seeming to loom as large off his horse as one. Wait. Already Fedrin was riding up, seeming to loom as large off his horse as one, with the lesser captain straggling behind him. Rourke noticed that a full third of these had been seconds in command yesterday, while nearly as many were newly promoted from the ranks. Connell looked around him. The scouts tell me that the Hygerians are fleeing from the city of Corel. I am minded to seat myself on the throne of my fathers as soon as may be. Clearly, if we wait until tomorrow, we will see no opposition. Yet I would rather it were settled today. Now tell me, not that what I wish to hear, but what is the truth? If I ride to Corel today, how many could I bring with me? The captains discussed matters amongst themselves for some moments. Then Fedrin finally reported. There is no question of moving so many wounded in case of raid or attack on them, so they must be guarded. Altogether, we can manage a force of about 2,500. So, and again, with no smiling faces on frowning facts, can we march safely to Corel with this many? This question was directed mostly at Rorik and Fedrin, who requested first to be allowed to speak to the scouts who had come in this morning. Who had come in since morning. It became clear from questioning at these that the Hygerian war host had ceased to be a host, every man being concerned to remove his household and goods safely from the reach of the king's host. Milord, we feel that we would fight us They would fight us only if we forced it upon them, and even then they are too disorganized to fight well." Cannell bowed his head in thought. After a moment he raised his head and spoke to them. "It may be that I am overproud, or that I am jealous of my rights, but I have waited over long from the death of my father to take my place on the throne. Some have called me king these many years, but we know, all of us, that I'm not truly king until I sit on the seat of Gun of Corel of Connell the Wild. Gather the men. Bring no one who is not willing to march. We go on as soon as you can be prepared. Rorik, will your warriors serve as bodyguard for the both of us?" "With the greatest of pleasure, my lord king. Or at least with the minimum of displeasure, if I have learned anything about soldiers," answered the king, his smile returning now that matters were settled. In spite of Connell's desire for speed, night found them still some 5 miles from Corral. A trifle impatiently, he agreed to camp for the night, but on the next morning he was waiting for the rest of them with an irritation only slightly disguised. The great movement westward from the city had not ceased. The road was covered with men, women, and children, carts piled high with goods and furniture. A squadron of cavalry, magnificently decked out in black leather adorned with gold, formed themselves in the path of the Asbalian force and waited. Rourke and Connell attempt to parley, promising no harm to anyone if they did not force a fight. The commander drew his small frame up so he looked as imposing as he spoke. Casting his dark-eyed stare down the length of his hawk nose, he answered, "Where should we go, and what place might we stay? For we are the men of Hygeria. We are the men of the king of Hygeria, and Hygeria has no king this day. Be sure that we shall not hear men say, 'They live, but their king is dead.'" It was with great regret that Connell led a skirmish to destroy them, nor was it an easy battle, for they fought bitterly and to the death. On their entry of the city, the men of Asbeln found chaos ruling. While the Hygerians strove to escape, certain Asbelnians, emboldened by the approach of the victorious king and his war host, displayed a ferocity they had not shown before. They began to fall upon the fleeing families and plunder their belongings. The first sight to greet Connell's eyes inside the gates was a pair of overturned carts, with a family of 5 lying scattered around them. "This must be stopped," the prince declared. "Bedron, arrange patrols through the streets. The perpetrators of such deeds are to be warned once. If they do not heed, then use whatever force is necessary to stop them." With his bodyguard, Connell continued through to the palace. It stood out, with a large courtyard before it, and a flight of broad stone steps leading up to the great doors. The woodwork of these doors were done by the dwarf Shaban at the request of Corral. Dobgal, brother of Shaban, Shilban, bound the doors in bands of iron, with runes of protection on them. On the inner faces of the bands, so that one who wished to read them must rend the doors apart. He wrote in Dwarvish runes. Wrote in the door. He wrote in the Dwarvish runes. On the outer surfaces, the same things were written in elder runes of the Shimruthir, for the dwarves are loath to let anyone but their own folk know their language. Yet, with such skill of the craftsmanship, that no man looked upon these doors without being moved by the wonder of them, and the beauty which could be crafted into such common materials. At the top of the stair stood a single man, but all eyes turned rather to the man at their foot. He was tall, slightly broader than Rorik, with glittering dark eyes and a beak of a nose. His right hand absently fingered his thick black beard. His attire was typically Hygerian: close-fitting black trousers, black cloak fastened at the right shoulder by a leaf-shaped golden brooch, the whole lying over a light red tunic. He wore a close-fitting iron cap for a helmet, and a long sword and dagger hung at his waist. He bore no shield. There was no man among the Hygerians who knew or guessed him to be Razak, the late king of the Hygerians. As the Osbalnian party drew to help before him, he looked up at Connell with a critical eye. "So this is the boy king of Asbaln? Well, boy, you have defeated the hosts of Hygeria, but there is one fight yet to be fought. Come now and fight for your kingdom." Connell did not move immediately. "Aye, you do well to fear me," declared Razak. "Come, I care not whether you wish to use your shield as well, so long as you will come measure swords with me." The prince turned to his men. "Let it be as he wishes. The two kings shall fight here, and let no man interfere, save at his peril." Dropping lightly from his horse, he drew his sword and dagger. Razak came at him in a sudden leap, but Cannell was not taken unawares. Back and forth they moved, the sun gleaming silver on sword and helm, sparking off darting dagger tips. It was an even fight, for Cannell was skilled in the use of sword, with or without shield, and he knew the use of the dagger well as well. On the other hand, the use of the sword and dagger together was a time-honored tradition in Hygeria. Only Connell's slightly greater speed saved him from Razak's greater skill. Thus the fight went on. Then they fell back from each other a moment. Razak's dagger was a sudden flash of silver in the air as he threw it, then leaped to attack immediately after. It almost succeeded, but when the clash ended, Connell was standing over the dead body of the greatest king of Hygeria, clutching a gashed and bleeding left arm. Somewhat wearily, he saluted his fallen enemy, then turned to give orders. "Let him be given a funeral honors after the same of the kings of Asbaln. He was a true king, though I can only be grateful that he is dead. Now, do you who followed me in battle, follow me to my throne." In this moment, there was a pounding of hooves, and the chief magician came dashing up to fling himself from his horse and shout, "My lord king, do not go in there yet." "And why not?" For answer, the old one pointed at the palace stair. At its head, where the Hygerian stood, there was a pillar of black smoke. The smoke disappeared suddenly, revealing the Hygerian once more as he made a swift motion with his hands. There was a momentary shimmering in the air, and he disappeared. "What does this mean, old one?" "A spell has been cast, my lord king. I cannot say what evil this one has done, but I have my suspicions." He looked around, then picked up a javelin that had been dropped in the course of some Hygerian soldiers' hasty retreat. He began to chant over it, and in the tongue of the Arquebuz Wazar. When he had done, he cast it in the direction of the palace stair. Yet before it had gone much more than halfway, there was a flash of brilliant light, and the spear disappeared. As the Asbalanians alternately rubbed their eyes and stared, Rourke and Connell approached the old magician. "What has been done here, old one?" "A barrier, lords. In the time that the two spells strove against each other, I was able to learn something about it. It is a harsh spell. For 27 men were killed to forge it. Thrice, 3 lives spent to gather the power of its making. It may be nullified by an equal number of lives with a proper counterspell, though such is not our way. The fastest way to remove it would be for someone to go in and slay him who stands within it. Other than that, it will require much work on the part of myself and my colleagues to clear this away, if we are indeed able to do so at all." "If you are able?" It is spells which I'm not familiar, but it seems that this spell will set itself firmer with every day for which it is not broken. But it is indeed strange that this magician should have chosen to lock himself within the barrier. I suspect it to be a trap, a means to draw someone within the barrier, and either slay him or entrap him there. But such a careless trap, it may take anyone. Not really, my lord. Would you send someone through that barrier to face whatever is behind it? He would not, said Rourke. Yet he cannot go in himself. I will do this thing myself, trusting in the power of the sword. No, mine is the throne. Mine shall be the danger. Cornell, you are freshly wounded. I have the sword, with which I have faced many strange things. I leave it to the old one to judge whether or not it will be enough. The old one shook his head. That is difficult to say. The death of the magician may cause the barrier to become unstable, even to fade away. But the barrier but let the barrier stand for more than a week, and it may be that even to slay him will not be enough. Weighing all the information available to me, I would say that you, with a sword, would have a greater chance than any other. But it will be necessary for you to go through the barrier. Will the sword not see me through? The nature of the spell is such that to pass the sword through would cause a result as that with the charmed spear. Let my colleagues and myself spend a little time together, and we may separate it for an instant, that you may pass through. From then it will depend on you. Cornell had been listening to all this, spoke up. Rourke, I will not allow this. You have already done for me much more than I am able to repay. Let us not speak of repayment, Connell. Who else is there? With the sword, I have a chance of facing whatever might wait behind the barrier. Who else can say the same, save perhaps one of the old one's colleagues? The sword is a defense against many things, and within the barrier, a warrior's hand will be needed more than a magician's spells. The danger is that the breaking of the barrier may rend space and time, and for one to find its way back here, some power will be needed, a power which will draw itself back. I think that the sword may well be that power. With the old one supporting Rorik, Connell yielded, though it was much against his will. Okay, so that was chapter 29. I like this one better. It's also very much like the other story, so of course I like it better. Yeah, that was pretty much all for tonight. So I really thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for watching past broadcasts, and I'll be back again with another chapter. So until then, I will talk to you all again very soon. Good night.